Hi there, this is Phil Simborg with another video from Chicago Action. We had a lot of matches during the Chicago Open Tournament, which was a lot of fun for the winners and a lot of fun for people like me who didn't win. But I'm happy to say that my students did very, very well, and that the Backgammon Learning Center teachers did well. I went pretty far. Mochi went pretty far. And our own John O'Hagan won the Masters, beating our own Michi. When I say our own, these are people that are our Backgammon Learning Center teachers and part of our people involved in our boot camps. So enough for the advertising. Let's get into the positions. I am calling this video today in honor of my good friend Carter Madig, who for some strange reason seemed to get a lot of positions right. And the first two positions I'm going to show you he got right, and many others, including me, had problems with them. So let's see how you did on these positions. So let's get right to it. First position is a money game. This is in the Chouette yesterday, where Dennis Culpepper gave us all a lesson. We had some pretty good players in that Chouette, including myself and Michi and David Rockwell and others. And Carter gave us a good lesson on how to play double two here. Red is holding the two cube. Red to play double two. If you're watching this this video on Facebook or YouTube, click in the lower right hand corner and you can make it large and fill the screen. And you can also pause the video so you can give it some thought of what you would do, and then you can see how you would do. And I always love getting emails telling me how badly or how wonderfully you did on these, or any additional comments or insights anybody has would be great. So I'm going to be quiet. My recommendation is you pause the video, figure out how you would play double two, and then we'll see what Carter and XG say is right. So obviously there's a hitting and a non-hitting play. The hitting play is kind of dangerous because you have that blot on the ace point. If you get hit back, you're not going to be happy, although the hitting play contains your opponent pretty well and gives you a pretty good game if you don't get hit back. And of course there's a couple of ways to hit. You can play 9-1 and pick up the checker on the 3 on the way, which everybody pretty much agreed was ugly, or you can make the 4 point. Or you can play safely and just hope to do better next time. So the right play, and the play that Carter wanted to make, and I'm not sure if I recall, I don't think we did make this play because we play a consulting Chouette and whoever yells and screams the loudest gets their way. But the right play is to make the 4 point. You've got to go forward in this game. You do win more games. You get gammoned pretty much the same as if you, here's the non-hitting play that I think was made, but you can see that you really need to compare it to that. You win far fewer gammons, and yes, you get gammon less, but the difference is very, very great, and the difference of wins is better by hitting. So that's the logic behind the play, and sometimes you just got to grin and grit your teeth and take the chances. Hitting is fun, like my friend Dean Munch always used to say. So score yourself a point if you got that one right. Let's go on to the next one. Problem number 2. This is the other one that Carter got right. I'd like to have a whole video someday of all the plays Carter gets right, but I have trouble finding that many. But let's go on. Blue to play 6-3 here, and again, it's a money game, and blue is holding a 2 cube. How would you play 6-3 here? Alright, hopefully you've had enough time to find your play, and again, pause the video if you need more time. Everybody will tell you that making the 5 point is critical. It's right to make the 5 point unless you can find a really good reason not to, and here there's a really good reason not to. It's simply you have a very ugly 6 if you make the 5 point with the 3, and you need to keep, your opponent has a far better board. You cannot afford to leave that blot by making the 5 point. The second best play, and let's plus it. I always recommend highlighting and plus-plussing plus+ing it. And by the way, plus+ is my new nickname for Mochi, because he's about as good as plus+. And if you hadn't heard, Steve Sack gave me a new nickname too, 2-ply. Carter says that the nickname does not refer to extreme gammon at all, but toilet paper. But 2-ply is not a bad. I hope I would be. I would hope to play as good as extreme gammon 2-ply someday, and Mochi probably does play about as good as plus+. Okay, so it is right to make the 2-point simply because you are less vulnerable to getting hit. Even if you get hit down here with this one remaining blot, it's not so horrible. This is the other play that was advocated, and again, the problem with this is you're leaving in 5s and 2s and all combinations of 5s and 2s, and even a 6-4 would hit you. So all 5s, 2s, and 6-4. Getting hit here is not a pleasant thing for blue. So a lot of times safe is better. Okay, next one. Number 3. We're done with Carter's correct plays. Now we're getting into some match play and other situations. This is still, though, a money game from the Chouette cube action. A red on roll cube action. Should red double? And if red double, should blue take or pass? Blue is on the bar. That makes it exciting. What would you do? Well, the first thing I always do in these kinds of positions, this is clearly a blitzing type position, even though red has 3 checkers back. You count the checkers in the zone, and it doesn't take long with 3 checkers back to know that red's got 12 checkers in the zone. You can't really do much of a good blitz unless you've got at least 9 checkers in the zone. You'd like to have 10, and even that depends on where the checkers are. But clearly with red making the 1-point and the 3-point, probably rolling double 5s beforehand, this is a blitzing game with plenty of checkers in the zone to blitz, and if you're successful, you win lots of gammons, and for that reason, it's a double. You want to activate gammons also because of the Jacoby rule. Now, I've learned that if you want to relate your money play games more to match play, you should uncheck the Jacoby rule so that you're not forced to double in order to win gammons. And when you uncheck the Jacoby rule, it actually does change the cube action for some problems. And this one, it makes it very close as to whether you double or not. It was a fairly solid double with the Jacoby checked, but a very small double this way, because even before you check the box, your gammons are worth 0.5 if you're not playing Jacoby, or if you're in a match, for example. But it is a small double because you just can't, you lose your market here too much, and that's the other theory that's so important. Anytime you think your opponent has a take, and you should figure that out using Woolsey's law before you decide to double, the only reason to double is if you lose your market. And here you will certainly lose your market if you make the 4-point, unless blue rolls a joker, double 4 or double 2. And you will probably lose your market if you just hit blue loose and he doesn't hit back. If he dances 25% of the time, even if you hit loose. If he does come in, he still probably has to take depending on where he comes in, but you've got a very, very strong game, and that's the reason for the cube. Why does blue have a take? Because he will often anchor in this game. Even if he gets hit loose, he might roll a 4, or even if he rolls a 2 or a 5, he has a good chance to make an anchor. And look, red doesn't always hit blue on this roll, and he doesn't always make a point on this roll. Well, let's find out. This is one of the things that, if you're not sure about what red rolls are, then Mochi and I covered this very well in the proficiency test presentation we made in Chicago. We had about 50, 60 people in the room, and we at length explained how to use dice distribution. So you go to analyze dice distribution, and we can see what rolls are really, really good for red coming up. Now, something I learned from Stick, every time you open dice distribution, immediately hit 4-ply to get a better reading on it. So obviously red's got one terrible roll, double 5. That's pretty horrible. You can't move any of these checkers, and he can't make a new point, and he can't hit, and he actually has to either leave a blot here or throw a checker down to the ace point. He's got one horrible roll, double 5. 5-1's not too good, doesn't do anything. And there's quite a few other rolls that just aren't too good. These are the below average rolls in red. 3-1 doesn't do much. You're going to hit loose, and 4-1, you're hitting loose. 6-1, you're not doing anything. I mean, so there's lots of rolls that give blue hope. Of course, there's rolls that put blue away, like double 4, double 2, 4-2 that just where it's in the movies. Somebody asked me in the lecture, why the gray bar? What does that mean? That just happens to be the roll that came up the next time or is coming up. XG knows what it's going to roll. Ooh, is that scary? XG knows what it's going to roll or what's coming up next. Wow, that's going to make a lot of people wonder if XG really is calling the shots. I don't believe it. Some very, very fine people do, but that's beside the point. You can see here good rolls and bad rolls, and there's enough rolls that don't put you to sleep where blue is in really reasonable shape to take the cube. Okay, let's go to number 4. Number 4 is a 5-2 to play for red. This came up in a match, and I was playing against a very, very fine player at double match point. In fact, I was playing Frank Talbot, and I never embarrass people when they make mistakes, so I'm not going to tell you whether Frank played this right or wrong or whatever. He did win this game and match, but he had a 5-2 to play here, and there's two very, very obvious choices. You're going to make the prime, make the 6 point, and make a good strong 5 prime with the back of it slotted, or you're going to hit. And one of those two plays is right. Which one would you do? I must tell you honestly, both Frank and I had problems with this, wondering what was right, and that's why I took a picture of it. I don't wait for the, even though it was streamed, I don't wait for the stream and the match evaluation when I see something interesting like this. Okay, so I'll be quiet. You tell me which play you would make. Okay, primes are very, very strong. They're very, very important when you can make a prime, especially when you have more timing as red does, but it's wrong in this case. It's right to hit. I would have thought it's right to hit because of, obviously you get more gammons when you hit, but gammons don't matter at DMP, but it's not about gammons. If you look at the evaluation, you are going to see that you simply win more by hitting than you do by getting another checker back. There's less jokers or ways for blue to escape and get out of here. So for long term and for winning chances, you are going to be right to hit instead of make the prime. This is certainly not a big error. Again, I want to put it in plus plus to get a higher reading, to get the mochi reading. And of course, if you really want to do it right, you roll it out. But a 5% is fairly significant, especially at the level of play that Frank Talbot plays. I consider him to be a real giant, one of the better players in the world, even though he's not on that list right now because he just doesn't play that much. But I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of Frank, and everybody who knows backgammon knows Frank and how good he is. So again, this is the right play. Hope you got it right. If you didn't, join the club of many of us who were not sure. Next play, number 5. This is a cube action problem that came up last night in the tournament in Chicago, our regular tournament. I was playing David Rockwell. David Rockwell was blue. I was red. I'm on roll, and I have an opportunity to recube here for the match. I'm losing 4 away, 3 away, and I got lucky and get a shot here. So, should I recube? And if I do, should David take or pass? Well, I'm going to tell you all right now what is obvious to any good player. He has a take. There's no question about the take. The question is, should I double? We know I'm not favored here. We know I can hit with a 5 or a 4-1 or a 3-2. And for those of you who are more advanced players, you also know that I do have some additional vig that if I don't hit, there are repeaters. There are numbers here where I'll immediately get another shot. For example, 2 very high numbers, or double 5 leaves a shot, of course. But there's plenty of numbers that leave. There's several numbers that leave shots next time. 5-4, 6-4, big numbers. Anyhow, if you were red and you're losing at this score, would you double? But even more important, ask yourself the question, do you know how to determine whether you should double or not? I'll give you a hint. You need to know what your doubling window is when your doubling window opens, or what they call your double point, and if you have higher chances than that or not. And the way to figure that is using math and knowing match equities and how often you win if you don't hit, and don't double, and how often you win if you don't hit and do double, and how often you win if you do hit and double, and how often you win if you do hit and don't double. So you're comparing all those, and you need to know something about match equity in order to come up with the doubling window. And I must tell you, I took a lot of time over the board, and I didn't come up with the number very well, and that's why I asked John O'Hagan to help me again, for maybe the 15th time, calculate these numbers or show me how to do them more quickly over the board. I had a good feel for it. So I'll shut up. Will you hit? Will you redouble here, or will you play from here? And this is one you certainly may want to pause, because any good player might have to take a while on this one. Well, it turns out after some calculation that I figured out that my doubling window was fairly low here. I had estimated it was probably around 30%, and it was a no-brainer that I was going to win this game more than 30%. So I doubled, and I was correct. And David, before we looked at it, also agreed that I was correct. David Rockwell knew this. It's a big double. I do win, it says 47% of the time, and that was surprising because, of course, I'm going to win immediately with a 5-3, 2, or 4-1. And I don't win every one of those games, but I win 96% of them if I hit. He's got about 3%. And then if I don't hit, the amazing thing, and I check this, if I don't hit, let's say I roll something that doesn't hit, like a 6-2 or 6-3 and run, I still have 12%. It's his roll, and I'm still about 12% to win. So that shows you not just the immediate repeater that I might get. Even if I don't get an immediate repeater, he might roll a 2 and a roll or 2. So there's repeaters after the repeaters. There's life after death. Your doubling window is around 31%. Let's take a look. Analyze cube information, and it shows that red has a doubling point of 31.67%. And since we're going to be playing for the match, that's the point. That's how much I need to have to win. So really, I'm way above that. I can win this game 47% of the time, and I should be redoubling if I can only win 31% of the time. These are the kinds of things that you need to know in order to be a really good player. I know them fairly well, and I'm a fairly good player. I need to sharpen the pencil here and learn these better and do these better. And I always, again, go to John O'Hagan as my go-to person. Not a bad go-to person, by the way. On the Mochi quiz, he is tied with John Klein for the highest score so far when the quiz was given in Washington and Chicago. There are 50 questions, and they both got 39 right, which is really, really, really high. I think the average is 22, so they did very well. Okay, let's go to the next problem. I hope you were smart enough to redouble this also. I had an additional incentive to redouble because I was playing a very fine player, playing David Rockwell. Even if it wasn't quite a redouble, I might just gamble with the guy because I don't want to be 1 away, 4 away Crawford. I think at 1 away, 4 away Crawford I have about 18%, so I might gamble with him anyway, even if it was slightly not a double. Okay, number 6. Number 6 is a cube action problem. 9 away, 9 away, may as well just as well be money. Red's on roll. Should red double? And should blue take or pass? Again, you might want to pause it, give it some thought. This came up in a match. Okay, pause the video, or you can go on and listen to what's right in my explanation. I wasn't sure it was a take. So, using Woolsey's law, if I'm not sure it's a take, I'm sure it's a double. Then if I was blue, by the way, I was red here and I did double. If I was blue, I wasn't sure that this is a double. I'm pretty sure it was a double, but I thought it was a double, and it might not have been a double. I mean, if red doesn't pick up this checker with a 2 or a 4, his game's not that good. And there's plenty of rolls that aren't 2s and 4s. And even if he picks up this checker, if blue rolls an immediate 4, or a 5-1 or a 5-4, and makes a high anchor, blue's got a pretty good game. So because I'm a bad enough player to not be sure this was a take, and a bad enough player to not be sure it's a double, by the way, I invented a term called reverse Woolsey's law. We know Woolsey's law is if you're not sure your opponent's taking, you should double. Well, with Kit's permission and a discussion over dinner with him one night, I told him my theory that if I'm not sure it's a take, I'm not sure it's a double, by the way. If I'm not sure it's a double, then it must be a take. So both of them seem to work, and they worked very well here. It's an absolutely strong double and absolutely a very, very strong take. Now, I'm sure Michi Mochi, John O'Hagan, Neil Kazaros, the Perry, the people that I go to for analysis that I respect, and there's many more, can come up with more mathematical and factual reasons or reference positions to tell you why this is a double and why this is a take. A really fine player would do a gammon adjusted take point to come up with a take. Let me just do that real quick. If you estimate you're going to get gammon 35% of the time and win gammons 8% of the time, that means your net gammon losses are 27%. Those 27% gammon losses times 0.5, because that's the value of gammons, is worth about 13.5. If you have a take point of about 21.5, your live cube take point of about 21.5, and you add 31.5 to that, that's about 35%. So if you can win the game 35% of the time, you probably have a take. Well, here you're winning it more than 35% of the time. So if you would guess here that you would probably win 37 to 40% of the time, that's one way you can come up to the idea that this is a take. And again, how many people estimate 35% gammons here? How many people know that if you turn the game around, it's around 8% gammons? The truth is, many people. The truth is, and they can, and it shocked and surprised me the first time I started hearing people like Jake long ago say, oh, I think you get gammon here 22% or not. You can do this with some practice. It isn't that complicated. You start with reference positions and you start estimating from there, and good players could probably come close to the 35% and 8%, and even come close to the winning chance of about 38%, and come up with a big take. Now, why is it a double? Once you know, if you did this right, that your opponent has a take, you look at market losers. If you hit this checker and he doesn't come in, you've lost your market. If you point on this checker, you probably lost your market. If you make a really good point, maybe if you make the 5 point with a 4-1 and he doesn't hit you, maybe you've lost, or anchor, maybe you've lost your market. There's all kinds of ways that your game has improved so much where you would be very doubtful that blue will take. And really, according to O'Hagan's law, you only need to lose your market a net of about 25% of the time to be right to double. Yes, the other 75%, and you didn't lose your market, maybe you're sorry you doubled, but as long as you're not too sorry and you're still a pretty good favorite, that's okay. It's only when the sorry is a real sorry, when there's all kinds of ways you can get buried and have the game turn around on the next roll. And I don't see a lot of this here. I don't see a lot of that happening. So all the theories will tell you this is a double and a take. My theory was much less scientific, and that's why I'm not a giant. Number 7, last one. This, again, is a cube action problem, but 9 away, 9 away. This is red on roll, and should red double, and should blue take or pass. This one I got half right. And the other half I would have been right, but I wasn't sure. So what do you think? Well, the double looked clear to me. The take wasn't so clear to me. It looks like it's a hard position to get off of that 1 point. But remember, pips are pips. Like Jake always says, pips is pips. And blue is up in the race, 22 pips. If he can move that back checker up a little bit and get out of there, he's got a heck of a race. And he might be able to do that. Plus the fact with one checker back, you're not going to get gammon too much. Unless red picks up another checker, gammons are going to be fairly small. So when you have a fairly low gammon risk, you have a high racing chances. Red doesn't always make a prime here. Doesn't always make his 4 point right away. Even if he does, blue has time to step up. There's game here. So it's a double and a take. I was sure of the double, and I wasn't as sure as the take. And if you look at the numbers, you can see that the take is very, very big. The double, either one would be a blunder, technically, but the take is an even easier thing to come to. It would be a bigger mistake to pass than it would be to not double. So there's the situation here. Again, if you're not sure this is a take, you should double. If you're sure it's a take, you should double if you think you have enough market losers. And if red has quite a few rolls that make the 4 point, he could roll double 4, double 5, double 6. He could roll even a 5-4. Well, 5-4 makes the 4 point. So, and on top of that, even if red doesn't roll something good, the only really great roll for blue includes a 3. And even if he gets a 3, 3 what and what happens after that? So you've got a double and a take here. I hope you enjoyed this video. The feedback I get is most people prefer these videos to my PowerPoints. I do 1 or 2 a month. And any feedback you want to give me at pjsimborg@gmail.com is I'm delighted to get. And thanks for watching. Come to Chicago sometime, like the sign said. We weren't shooting at you. Bye-bye.